I am standing here at the Daniel Lady Farm, right here on Route 116, the Bonnytown Road. This stone house was built around the year 1830. The barn next to it was built in the year of 1842. And this is a very historic site. It was here where the Army of Northern Virginia's commander, Robert Edward Lee, met with his left flank commanders, which was Major General Richard S. Ewell and also Major General Edward Allegheny Johnson. Now, Edward Allegheny Johnson was actually had just taken over the old Stonewall Jackson's corps after Stonewall Jackson was killed at the Battle of Chancellorsville. He took over his corps, and it was their troops that moved right through this area here, right past the Daniel Lady Farm in that direction for the attacks on July 2nd on Wolf's Hill and Culp's Hill. And of course, the results of these attacks, which failed to break the Union line, was that the troops that were wounded and dying were brought back into this area here. And they occupied this farm. The officers who were wounded were actually being worked on, limbs amputated in the home, and there are blood stains on the floor in the parlor room, which I'll take some pictures and show you. And then the soldiers were brought over here to the barn and operated in on the barn, which we will take a look at in another video. But again, this is the spot where General Robert E. Lee met with Richard Ewell and Edward Allegheny Johnson and planned the assault on Culp's Hill on July 2nd and July 3rd of 1863. This has been the Daniel Lady Farm on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Lady Farm Part 2 here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And I'm here at the Daniel Lady Barn here. We're going to take a look inside the barn. We've been given the permission to go inside the barn and take some photos. Before we do, though, I do want to mention there are two carvings outside the barn. The first one says HIP, and it sits over here, or HIR rather, right here along the modern-day rain pipe. The second one's more interesting. It's JP 1842. Now that is near the corner of the building. That's one of the cornerstones that was put in by the builder, who I believe was either a Jacob or John Powers of Powers Hill, who was the one who probably built this barn in 1842. Now again, Edward Allegheny's Johnson's troops came from the direction up here toward the camera, and during the action on July 2nd and 3rd, all in this area and over to the Culp's and Wolf's Hill, as the soldiers who were wounded were being brought back to this farm, they were placed in this barn here. And today, this barn pretty well is intact with the original woodwork and beams. Over in the corner over here is actually a window where a soldier had inscribed his initials and his regiment. And we're going to take a look over here. There's a lot of barn swallows here in this building as well. Right here against the window in this here is a carving that says 44 VA JB. And again, this is just one of those little secrets about the battlefield of Gettysburg that most people don't get to see when they come just for a visit. This takes a little bit of study and someone to go around and ask permission to go inside of places. But again, in the barn itself is history, such as the carvings on the outside of the building and on the inside of the building as well. And also there was a shell that came through just up here, right here where you see, and it went right in out the front of the barn. and it did leave some damage. And of course, the front of the barn was repaired, but they left the shell damage pretty well intact. This has been the Daniel Lady Farm Part 2 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Okay, this is the Daniel Lady Farm Part 3 here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And I'm standing here on the northern end of the Daniel Lady barn, overlooking this area of boulders here. According to the 1864 Elliott burial map, most of the dead from the Daniel Lady Farm were buried here, where you see these boulders. They were buried here in mass graves, and then in 1872, most of their bodies were disinterred and brought to southern cemeteries such as Richmond's Hollywood Cemetery, where they were buried under the moniker Gettysburg Dead. However, this is one of the rare spots in Gettysburg where not all the bodies were removed. There are at least 24 bodies that were never found off of the Daniel Lady Farm. And inside the house today is a small plaque that is in memory of those 24 Confederate soldiers whose remains were never found and still to this day haven't been found. The only thing here today that even shows that there's any kind of Confederate cemetery here is someone had placed a Confederate States of America marker here in one of these boulders. And this, of course, marks the general area where the Confederate cemetery was here on the Daniel Lady Farm. And if you pull the 1864 Elliott map, you'll see the rows of graves that were here. This has been the Daniel Lady Farm Part 3 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Farm Part 4 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, and also Secrets of the Battlefield. And I'm standing here on the north side of the Daniel Lady Farm, which would be behind us over here in the distance. And we're going to talk about a secret road that used to exist. Today's Route 116, the Bonneville Road, which used to be the Bonnetown Road in the 1860s, is just over here in our front. At one time, a secret road that crossed behind the Daniel Lady Farm and came right back here, where then it made a turn up in this direction and then went up toward the George Wolfe Farm over here where you see the water tower today, which is also the site of Camp Letterman. Now, the reason that this road was here, it used to start in this direction just on the other side of the creek, because it was a toll road, and people trying to avoid the toll to come into Gettysburg would actually cut off this road here to get around the toll house. And then they would just come up to this way, where they would then turn up toward the George Wolfe Farm, which was today Route 30. This road has the trace still that exists, and just here to the right in the brush over here is a stone wall that used to line that road. And this is one of those little known facts about the Battle of Gettysburg. It was also here on this hillside that Major General Edward Allegheny Johnson halted his troops on July 1st and into the 2nd. They spent the night of the 1st up here on this hillside before heading toward the Daniel Lady Farm, and then of course after meeting with General Robert E. Lee and Richard E. Ewell, then the attacks were planned on Culp's Hill on July 2nd into the 3rd of 1863. But here on the evening of July 1st, 1863, just here on this hillside, was where the troops from Edward Allegheny Johnson's division and Richard Ewell, some of the old Stonewall Brigade, bivouacked here for the night. This has been the Daniel Lady Farm Part 4 and Secrets of the Battlefield, the old hidden road on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.